أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته and a very warm welcome to this Thursday edition of Community Pulse on Radio 786 and 100.4 FM, also 1584 medium wave in Pretoria. I'm Zainab Bean and I will be with you until about 12 o'clock. In between, Mishka Mohammed will keep you company with some beautiful sounds, also some messages, requests, update you as to what's happening in and around the community, and also bring you those latest job offers this morning, and that just after 10 o'clock. And then we have, of course, in studio for the first hour, Dr. Faiez Kirsten, and he joins me live this morning, and we know that he always has something interesting up his sleeve, so we will have him live this morning in studio, so you can stay tuned for that. And we're talking about fasting. Really, we're not so far from the month of Ramadan also, and we've already seen that many people are already not advertising, but they're talking about preparing for this month of Ramadan. And we know this month is, of course, one of the sacred months of the year for Muslims. And so inshallah, we take a look at the science of fasting and fasting as a defense against silent weapons. And so last week, some of our discussion was about the silent weapons, the quiet wars document, and that, of course, we discussed last week. So inshallah, we take a look at the science of fasting and fasting as a defense against silent weapons, inshallah, with Dr. Faiez Kirsten, who is live in studio this morning. And then between 11 and 12, we back with Education Matters, and our science and maths tutor, Sufyan Al-Talib, will be joining me live in studio this morning. So that is just after 11 o'clock, and he will take a look at some of the latest in terms of education, but we'll also be catching up with someone from the department, but a bit later about that, inshallah. So all that and more, you're on Radio 786 and 100.4 FM, also 1584 medium wave in Pretoria. Now the time is 19 minutes past 9 o'clock, and as mentioned, we do have Dr. Faiez in studio with us this morning. Dr. Faiez, assalamu alaikum, and shukran for being here.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Zainab.
How are you this morning?
Alhamdulillah, I'm very well, very well.
You look very worried.
Worried? No. Well, I'm not worried. Maybe I just look worried.
Okay.
I don't know why I look like I don't feel, though.
But you have those faces that are worry faces.
I make faces.
Well, maybe we should just recap what we discussed last week, just really briefly.
Yes, we spoke about several documents which prove, in fact, that the globalist agenda is not a conspiracy theory, but actually a conspiracy fact. There's many more documents. In fact, the best website to go to is called stopthecrime.net. You can download all these documents for free. A woman who runs that website is called Deborah Tavares. She's done amazing work, on what is actually happening regarding the globalist agenda. It's actually a genocidal agenda if you really look at it. And download those documents. We discussed 3 last week, and I just want to, maybe before we start on fasting, is just describe what the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars document says about the actual weapons themselves, how it describes them, if I can. Should I do that? Okay, so it describes silent weapons as such. It says, everything that is expected from an ordinary weapon is expected from a silent weapon by its creators, but only in its own manner of functioning. It shoots situations instead of bullets, propelled by data processing instead of chemical reactions or explosions, originating from bits of data instead of grains of gunpowder, from a computer instead of a gun, operated by a computer programmer instead of a marksman, under the orders of a banking magnate instead of a military general. It makes no obvious explosive noises, causes no obvious physical or mental injuries, and does not obviously interfere with anyone's daily social life. Yet it makes an unmistakable noise, causes unmistakable physical and mental damage, and unmistakably interferes with the daily social life that is unmistakable to a trained observer, one who knows what to look for. The public cannot comprehend this weapon and therefore cannot believe that they are being attacked and subdued by a weapon. The public might instinctively feel that something is wrong, but that is because of the technical nature of the silent weapon. They cannot express their feeling in a rational way or handle the problem with intelligence. Therefore, they do not know how to cry for help and do not know how to associate with others to defend themselves against it. When a silent weapon is applied gradually, the public adjusts or adapts to its presence and learns to tolerate its encroachment on their lives until the pressure, that is the psychological via economic, becomes too great and they crack up. Therefore, the silent weapon is a type of biological warfare It attacks the vitality, options, and mobility of the individuals of society by knowing, understanding, manipulating, and attacking their sources of natural and social energy and their physical, mental, and emotional strengths and weaknesses. Now those are silent weapons, okay? And you see this as a doctor. I see this all around me all of the time. We are under serious, attack by these silent weapons, and people get sick and die, from them. All around you. You don't see it as something abnormal. You just think a person is dying a natural death or a death from an illness. But many times it's actually an unnatural death. So the situation is extremely serious, although many people don't realize it, as they actually describe in their own document. People won't actually know that they're being attacked. Doesn't feel like you're being attacked because it's a silent weapon. How do we defend against it? That's the question.
And the question that we asked last week also, but now this morning we almost answer that question, and we take a look at fasting and the science of fasting, and also fasting as a defense against silent weapons. Now, Dr. Faiez, when we speak about fasting and the science of fasting, I think that all of us, we know that every year there's a month of the year where we all go through this, and it's I don't think that there's much thought being given to the fasting, the process of fasting, and what actually happens to the body, and why it is so necessary for us to actually go through this particular phase.
Well, fasting has been done from the time Nabi Adam was created. So the first man who walked on earth actually fasted, and for thousands and thousands, and since, as we just said, from the time we've been on this earth, people have been fasting. It's actually it's the oldest dietary intervention in the world, And in ancient times, they fasted for health reasons and spiritual reasons. So there's two reasons why people really fast. One is for health reasons, and the other one is for spiritual reasons. And we so used to fasting for spiritual reasons, okay? But we also get the health benefits from it. But we oftentimes negate it during the month of Ramadan because we overeat in the morning and we overeat in the evening. I mean, we get a little bit of benefit during the day, but then we negate it, as I say. If we didn't negate it, probably we'd be the healthiest people. But all religious persuasions actually encourage fasting as part of their religion, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism. All religions actually fast in some way or the other. But intermittent fasting for health reasons is a brilliant way to become healthy. In fact, I wanted to ask the listeners a question, but we gave them the answer already. I would ask, if you're overweight or obese, what would be the best way to lose weight and keep it off? Would it be diet? Would it be exercise? Or just stop eating? And most people would say diet and exercise, okay? Because that's what is promoted in the marketplace. Diets sell like crazy. There's so many different diets.
Especially women.
And exercises and going to the gym is like the in thing, to lose weight or to be healthy. But actually, science has proven that just stopping eating is actually more powerful than diet and exercise, even the two together.
So we are actually at an advantage because we know that the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam teaches us that to do that intermittent fasting, it is actually not just spiritually good for you, but also for your own health.
So if your intention is to fast for spiritual reasons, you're going to get the health benefits anyway.
So like a bonus.
It's a bonus, right? But if you're just fasting for health benefits, then you may not get the spiritual benefits because that wasn't your intention. But I must tell you a story about weight loss. I mean, in 1965, a Scotsman, 27 years old, he walked into a medical center in Dundee, Scotland. He weighed 211 kilograms. He came into the center and he said to the doctor, "I need to lose weight." So the doctor, in a sort of offhand, matter-of-fact way, jokingly said, "Why don't you stop eating for a few days?" And the Scotsman took it seriously. He said, "Okay, it sounds like a good idea." So he checked himself into the hospital and they monitored him over the next few days. He just stopped eating. He just drank water, took a few multivitamin pills, and he was fine after a few days. And he said after the 5th, 6th day, he was feeling really great. So they discharged him and he went home and he carried on fasting, just drinking water and taking a few vitamin pills, and he ate some yeast tablets also, something like that. And guess how many days he went on fasting for? Coming in sort of occasionally to the hospital to be monitored. Take a guess. He broke the world record of fasting, a water fast. How many days do you think he lasted?
100 days?
382 days. He didn't eat for 382 days. How much weight do you think he lost?
Most of the weight, I suppose.
If you stop eating, you are definitely going to lose weight. He lost 25 kilograms.
So he was half the weight that he was.
He lost half the weight. Well, yeah. Well, he lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
He was 211, he lost 125. He actually maintained his target weight of 81 kilograms. He actually just gained about 7 kilograms and then came back down, I think. But in dieting, when you lose weight, what oftentimes happens? Why don't diets work? Because people gain their weight back again after a few months, okay? So there's all these different diets in the market, you know, this diet and that diet, the beach diet. There's so many different diets. And the reason why there's so many different diets is because they don't work, okay? People always regain that weight because the physiological mechanisms in fasting, which means not eating, and calorie restriction, which is dieting, in other words, you're eating but you're eating less, okay, is completely different. There's different physiological mechanisms that operate, okay? And so that's why diets don't work, but fasting does. And so the Scotsman lost so much weight and he kept it off. 382 days of not eating. I went 5 days without eating, just drinking water. The third day was hell, I won't lie to you, because you're detoxing, you see. I slowed down so much. In fact, when my daughter phoned me, she said, "Dad, what's wrong with you? Did you have a stroke?" I said, "No, I'm just conserving energy." She said, "Lol, okay, cool."
But I think we kind of identify with that because we know when it comes to the second, third day, or the first day of fasting, it's not an easy day, because of what the body goes through in terms of detoxing,
and especially if you're eating the wrong food, like eating a lot of processed foods, eating a lot of carbs, and you try to fast after that or during that period while you're eating all these carbs and junk food, fasting can be an actual nightmare. Can be a complete nightmare. But if you're on a low-fat, you're on a low-carb diet, high-fat diet, a ketogenic diet, and you fast, it's like the same thing. You don't feel it. I mean, and I've been on a ketogenic, low-carb, high-fat diet for a long time now, but I still detoxed on the third day. The fourth day, I felt like I could take on anyone. I had so much energy because now you're producing ketones, you know, you're burning fat, and it's a different mechanism that's operating now. So.
But do you think that we should perhaps, before the actual time for fasting, for Muslims especially, starts, we should put our bodies through almost a preparation period, because we know we eat only junk most of the time, and so the body almost goes through some shock when it comes to the first. That's why fasting is a nightmare for some people.
A very good idea to prepare yourself, you know, for the month of Ramadan by stopping eating all the junk, go on a low-carb, high-fat diet, and your body starts becoming fat-adapted. You start burning fat, okay? Then when you go on a fast, it's like almost the same thing, you know? Because when you're fasting, you're actually burning fat. But when you see fasting and starving also two different things, okay? Fasting is a voluntary thing. You can stop anytime, okay? Starving is not voluntary, okay? That means you have no food and you're not sure if you're going to get any food anytime soon because there's nothing available. So you actually start starving. In other words, your body, you know, goes into a different metabolic state. Whereas fasting is different. Okay?
But now, I always wonder about the fact that fasting has so much benefits to the body, especially, right? But now, when it comes to the fasting of Ramadan, we know that we fast the entire day, but then we break our fast with all the wrong things.
Well, that's the biggest problem. And the studies have been done, you know, on people fasting.
So what are we basically doing to the body?
They done it on athletes. You know, there's many benefits when you fast and you train or you engage in exercises. You know, the body changes amazingly. But if you're fasting during the day and you're gorging yourself at night, I mean, then you're negating the whole day's benefits that you got, you know. You may have got some spiritual benefits, some health benefits. But in the evening comes, you just start eating crazy. Your insulin goes up, you know, it does nothing for your insulin. And that's the biggest problem, you know, with weight gain is actually, weight gain is not a calorie problem. You know, people becoming obese and overweight. It's not because they're taking too much calories and not expending enough calories. It's actually an insulin problem. It's a hormonal problem. And fasting actually drops your insulin level amazingly low, okay? And that's when you start releasing fat stores. When your insulin is kept high all the time by eating all the junk carbs and all of this stuff, then you can't release fat from your fat stores. You it's like Dr. Jason Fung, he's the guru on fasting. He says it's a two-compartment syndrome, a two-compartment situation. you store glucose in the fridge and you store fat in the freezer. And if you're eating carbs all the time, you're just keeping your fridge full of glucose, and that's what you're using up. You can't get to the fat stores because the insulin is keeping the fat in the freezer. Whereas now when you fast, your insulin levels drop, you use up your glucose, your glycogen stores in your liver and your muscle, and then you start burning fat. Okay, so you want to get to that point where you start burning fat. And when you burn fat, fat takes up a lot of space in your body. That's why people look fat. Okay, because it's a space occupying lesion. I call it fat in a sense. So when you start burning the fat, then you just start shrinking. Okay, you want to get to fat burning. That's where you want to be. Yeah.
You're listening to Radio 786 100.4 FM. The time almost 25 to 10. And in studio, I do have Dr. Faiez Kirsten talking about the science of fasting and fasting as a defense against silent wars, or silent weapons rather. And we speaking about overweight, or being overweight and obesity, and really what is the best, and saying that fasting really is the best way of getting rid of the fat, but also keeping your weight where it should be. Now, we are receiving a few messages via WhatsApp, Dr. Faiez, and we at the same time are due for the break, but I'm going to read one of the messages we received. It says, fasting also allows the gut to have a rest and repair itself. It's important, though, to start right, and more importantly, gradually and carefully break the fast, allowing the gastric juices to build up again. I do every year 14 days in spring since 30 years. Best remedy for good health.
Absolutely. Good points there. Thank you, Shukran, for that.
So let's take that break, inshallah, and after the break we will continue. Remember 021 699 1786 or 0786 1011 12. Stay tuned.
Radio 786 100.4 FM stereo. Radio 786.
Twenty-two minutes to 10 on Radio 786. If you have just joined us, it is the first hour of Community Pulse, and we're talking fasting, the science of fasting, with Dr. Faiez Kirsten. You're more than welcome to be part of the conversation in 0786 1011 12. That's the WhatsApp line, and then also 021 699 1786. Now, one of the messages that came via WhatsApp this morning says, Assalamu alaikum. It is said that if we add 1 teaspoon of Zamzam water to 5 liters of water, the water alkalinizes the body. Your comment on this, please, doctor.
I don't know about that. Some doctors believe in the alkaline acidity theory. Some say no, that doesn't apply. So I don't know specifically about that technique of adding Zamzam water to normal water and then alkalinizing the body.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with that. Yeah.
And then fasting is the best diet, and also salah is the best cardio exercise 5 times a day. Food for the soul and good for the health, physical, spiritually, and emotionally.
Yes, very much so. Salah is a light form of exercise, and if you do it often, you'll get the benefit for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But now, Doctor, we're speaking about the science of fasting, and I think when it comes to diet, the question that concerns scientists are no longer simply what should we eat or how much should we eat. Now it's when we should eat and whether we should eat at all. But before we continue with that, let's first go to the lines. Radio 786, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Shinabi. Assalamu alaikum, Doctor. How are you, Doctor?
Wa alaikum salam. Alhamdulillah, I'm very well, brother. Yourself?
I'm going to ask Zainab because she sounds good, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
I just want to add to the discussion, Doctor, and I wish you can elaborate on this. Very, very important. And it's been proven how fasting is very beneficial to somebody's body or to mankind's body. It is, the benefits, of fasting. The health here. But what has happened is that we have made fasting a ritual in the sense that it's become so spiritual. It is a spiritual aspect as well, but we have commercialized fasting now. It's commercialized in such a sense that fasting is in fact, a lot of people, I can't blame the business people. I mean, one don't have to blame them, but one have to make people aware that fasting is not only just fasting and thinking that you will be forgiven. because there's a hadith, I don't know how true it is, that says that Abu Huraira said, that our Nabi said, that if you fast the month of Ramadan, then all your previous sins will be forgiven. Now, whether that is true, I doubt it very much. But be that as it may, this is how fasting has been used, Doctor. Can you please elaborate on how fasting has been commercialized?
Okay,
Shukran, Doctor.
Shukran.
I'll listen to you.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Dr. Faiez.
Well, shukran for that question, brother. Well, look, everything in the world is commerce, okay? You yourself are a bit of commerce. You're a business yourself, okay? You're generating money for another business. So religion has been commercialized, whether it's Christianity, Islam, Judaism. It's all commerce. It's about the agenda. It's called Novus Ordo Seclorum, okay? It's a new secular worldly order. It's about materialism. So they use religion to make money also. And so that's not surprising that the month of Ramadan would be used to make money, okay? So we must expect that. This is the commercial world that we're living in. In fact, money has more value than human life, okay? Children die every day because corporations must make money, okay? So we're at the bottom rung of the pyramid of control, and corporations are actually have more value than human life. And that's what we've allowed. We've consented to it, so we must accept it. So yes, fasting, Ramadan is commercialized. Christmas is commercialized. Everything is commerce.
Now, earlier, just before we took the caller, and I do encourage people to stick to the topic 0216991786 or 0786101112, the science of fasting and fasting as a defense against these silent weapons. Now, as I mentioned, that when it comes to diet, the question that concerns scientists are no longer simply what should we eat and how much we should eat. Now it's when we should eat and whether we should eat at all, at least for a certain period of time. The relationship between health and longevity and fasting, that is not eating, was as recently as 20 years ago seen as the scientific backwater. But this is changing. Longevity research has entered the mainstream, and with a wide body of research that significant calorie reduction over specific periods of time may actually improve long-term health. Exactly what we were talking about earlier. But it's interesting that it took so long.
Yeah, well, the medical fraternity are slow coaches. They take decades to catch up, unfortunately. And fasting has been with us from the creation of mankind, like we said. But because we mind controlled and we made to believe things that are not true, that is why we don't really, as doctors specifically, understand what we're doing. Because we trained in a certain way, which is not really for the benefit of ourselves, first of all, and our communities, but for the benefit of specific entities. So yes, it's about intermittent fasting. Everybody should be doing that. You have different times of eating. It's like when to eat, not just eating all the time. Today, basically, people eat all the time. They eat 5, 6, 7, 8 meals a day. When it's not necessary, you must just eat when you feel hungry. Okay, that's natural. You don't eat because some food company told you to have breakfast so they can sell more breakfast cereals. Okay, that's why they make people eat breakfast. You don't actually have to eat breakfast. I don't have breakfast. I don't know when last I ate breakfast.
But I was taught that breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Well, that's because,
now you're telling me something else.
Because they told you that.
But doesn't it dilute the hydrochloric acid in the stomach? And
no, you don't have to have breakfast. Why? You must break fast. We all fast. I mean, there's a time when you sleep, you're fasting. That's why they call it break fast or breakfast.
So what do you suggest we do in the morning?
But breakfast doesn't have to be at 8 o'clock when you get up out of bed and run to the table and eat a bowl of cereal.
But I must be honest with you, if I don't have breakfast, then I am half dead. I must be honest.
Because your body's conditioned to that, but you can recondition your body to have breakfast at 12 o'clock. Okay, that'll be lunch. So I do a 18-6 fast. In other words, I fast for 18 hours of the day. And I eat my eating period is 6 hours, between 12 and 6. Then I stop eating at 6 o'clock and I eat
until the next day.
And the next day, 12 o'clock. So that's a type of intermittent fasting. They call it lean gains. Sometimes you do a 16-8. I do a 18-6. Sometimes I'll do a 16-8, but most of the time it's 18-6. And then you have different kinds of intermittent fasting, 24 hours, one day off, one day on, You have 36-hour fast and so forth. So there's various kinds of intermittent fasting, and they all have benefits. But people must, depending on your specific situation. If you have type 2 diabetic and you want to reverse your diabetes, then you can fast for longer periods, days rather than, hours or 1 or 2 days. You fast for 14 days or 7 days, whatever. But there's many different ways of actually intermittent fasting. Yeah.
So you're saying that I should have my jungle oats at about 12 o'clock in the afternoon?
Good idea.
It's Radio 786 100.4 FM, and we're talking fasting, the science of fasting. And I want to touch on fasting as a defense against silent weapons.
Well, this global health crisis is because of the silent weapons, and it comes in various forms, like we just described. Not me. I mean, I'm not describing. These guys are telling us what silent weapons are. In their own documentation, they tell us what these silent weapons are, like I just read out just now. So what do these silent weapons do? They make you sick and they kill you. Okay, they give you cancer, they give you neurodegenerative disorders, they give you chronic diseases, other forms of chronic diseases. So at the cellular level, what actually happens is you get damage to your mitochondria, and you get what we call oxidative stress in the cells. There's a lot of free radicals forming in the cells from these silent weapons, especially the electromagnetic radiation coming off cell phones and cell phone towers and so forth. That's a massive weapon. We should maybe talk about that, the weaponization of cell phone towers at some point. These cell phone towers are weaponized, okay? So they're not just for communication purposes, okay? They're a silent weapon. So these electromagnetic radiation, toxins in the foods and so forth, they damage your body at a cellular level, cause what we call oxidative stress, form a lot of free radicals which damage the mitochondria, kill the mitochondria, make them dysfunctional, damage your DNA in the nuclei of the cells. Even the mitochondrial DNA is damaged, and that makes you sick, okay? So fasting actually reverses that. If you go on a fast, you will actually reverse the damage to the mitochondria, to the cells. You reduce the oxidative stress in the cell, and your cells then start to heal and regenerate. And fasting also promotes what we call autophagy or autophagy, with this cleanup of debris while you're fasting. The cells clean themselves out, all the dead material, dead protein, junk proteins are all removed, and that starts to get your brain and your body working normally again. So this is what fasting does for you. It's a cleanup process, a repair process, happens while you're fasting. And there's so many benefits.
So in other words, the body basically needs to go through this process
on a regular basis.
But
yes.
How wonderful is this not if we're getting that opportunity every single year?
Once a year, I mean, to fast for a whole month is unbelievably amazing, you know. But you can't fast every day, like I said, intermittent fasting.
Or you can follow the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam,
fast twice a week.
Yeah.
You know.
That is where we maybe should start, isn't it?
Yeah, at least one day a week or twice a week. Do a full 24-hour fast, and then maybe an intermittent fast in between. But people must choose what is best for them. Everybody's different. Yeah.
I want to talk about when, because we spoke about what we should eat, but looking at when is the best time to eat. You mentioned that breakfast is not.
It depends on the person. You know, some people like to eat breakfast. So I'm not saying you mustn't have breakfast. If breakfast is good for you, then you have breakfast. Then you stop eating at maybe 12 o'clock, and then you fast from 12 to the next breakfast, you know. So you must see what works for you as an individual person.
I remember my grandmother always used to say that you shouldn't eat late at night.
Good point. Clever grandmother. Try to stop eating at 6 o'clock, at least 3 hours before you go to bed. Because that's going to cause a lot of stress on your cells. Because you don't need energy when you're sleeping. Okay, so you're eating, say you go to bed at 10, you eat at 9. Now there's a lot of food in your digestive tract, and now you must digest it and you absorb it, and your body doesn't need that energy because you're sleeping. Okay. So what actually happens is you start getting damage to the cells. You get again oxidative stress. You get a lot of free radicals forming in the cells while you're sleeping because you have energy there that you don't need, and that starts damaging your cells, and you start getting old before your time and so forth from eating too late or just before you go to bed.
Now we have one more WhatsApp message. Assalamu alaikum, doctor. Isn't the sunnah the best way to eat?
Meaning?
The sunnah, I'm thinking probably how the Prophet used to have the food like a quarter for.
Oh yes, yeah. A third for food, a third for water, and a third for air. Oh yes, yeah. I mean that's very healthy, you know. And the Japanese just say something. They say hari hachibu or something like that. Just before they're full. They don't eat till they're full. They eat till they almost full. And at that point, they get up and they say, harahachibu. You know, I think it means I'm had enough or something. But the Prophet is right, you know. Don't eat till you're so full you can't even get up from the table.
Let's go to the lines. Radio 786, assalamu alaikum. Okay, 0216991786 or 0786 1011 12. The time now at 11 minutes to at 10 o'clock on Radio 786. We're talking about the science of fasting and also how fasting has a defense against silent weapons. Now, we spoke about how much we should eat and also when we should eat. And as I mentioned, my grandmother used to always say that don't eat late at night because it's just, she never said why, but she just always said, and we sort of grew up with this kind of thinking that it's not good to eat just before you go to bed. And alhamdulillah, that is in fact the case. Now, in terms of longevity, as I mentioned, longevity research has entered the mainstream, as they are saying, and with this wide body of research, that significant calorie reduction over specific periods of time may actually improve long-term health, which is what we are explaining. But before we comment, let's first take this caller that's been trying to get through for a while now. Okay,
Shame,
seems to be, yes, 0216991786. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam Zainab and salam to the beloved doctor, yes.
Walaikum salam wa
Shukran
rahmatullahi
for
wa
this
barakatuh.
beautiful deen, and this is my experience. We just came to the summer now, this is my experience. And it's so blazing hot. You just try and fast. You feel so cool. Me, even in my younger days, all kinds of funny things, being a naughty boy and what it is. I developed a very ulcers and all of these kind of things which wasn't good for my body. I'm 70 years old now. I don't take any tablets whatsoever or any medicine unless I'm sick. And behold, fasting does me so good. And I'm looking forward, especially for a Monday and a Thursday. It keeps me fit. It keeps my body feeling good. And so I'm so shukr for Allah for giving us all this as a Muslim, this kind of information for me as an ordinary human being. Shukran, doctor.
Afwan, only a pleasure.
Enlightening us with all these kinds of knowledge.
Shukran so much to your contribution. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We have about 4 minutes left before we need to conclude. And as I was mentioning before we took the caller, what was I saying, Dr. Faiez?
About your clever grandmother.
Nonetheless, we were talking about longevity and
longevity. That's right.
Yeah, and I was hoping that you give your take on that, inshallah.
We haven't even touched the surface about fasting. There's so much information, but definitely longevity. I mean, they've done many studies on rats and so forth, and they found that if they reduce the calorie intake of rats, they live longer than rats that eat normally, basically normal amounts of food. So definitely. And there's a specific mechanism by which it works. Fasting actually inhibits something called the mTOR pathway. It's a mechanism that actually drives the aging process. So fasting actually inhibits this pathway, and so promotes longevity. No doubt about it. The less you eat, the longer you live. So maybe we should all start eating less from today.
Inshallah. But one of the concerns that I have, if you've been on a terrible diet or you've been eating a whole lot of junk and that can be most of us, or it maybe is most of us. I imagine
so, yes.
So now, don't you put your body through some sort of a shock that we earlier spoke about, and as I mentioned, that you should basically prepare your body for the actual fast, but how can one almost wean yourself off before you
the bad lifestyle?
Yeah.
It's a process.
To get the full benefit of the fast.
It's a process. It's a good idea, like you say, to prepare yourself, because fasting can be a nightmare if your body's under stress from all the junk that you put into it over the years. So fasting can be a nightmare. You get hungry, you get lethargic, you get irritable, crabby. You don't feel good when you're fasting if you've been eating junk food. So it's a good idea to prepare. I absolutely agree with you. But it's a process, yeah. But it can be done. It's not impossible.
Just on a final note, what piece of advice would you like to leave to the listeners this morning in terms of the science of fasting, but also how it is a defense against these silent weapons?
I think Hippocrates said, our food should be our medicine should be our food. He said, but to eat when you are sick is to feed your sickness. So, and Plutarch said, instead of using medicine, rather fast a day. Okay? And a guy called Mark Sisson said, when a person has had too much to eat, fasting is the smartest thing he could do. Okay? So there's so many I haven't even touched the surface in terms of cancer prevention and reversal and so forth through fasting. I haven't even touched that. There's so many benefits, but maybe we'll leave it at that, or maybe
inshallah. Inshallah.
Yeah, we leave it at
Dr.
that.
Faiez, shukran so much. And as we are fast approaching that significant month of Ramadan, we once again we are that reminder to you, the listener, about how fortunate we should be as Muslims to get the opportunity to give our body that the benefit of fasting every single year, alhamdulillah. So on that note, do stay tuned to Radio 786 and 100.4 FM. And many thanks to Dr. Faiez Kirsten, who joins me every Thursday, same time, same place. So don't miss him next week, inshallah. That's it. Do stay tuned. We'll take that break and then the news at 10.